My name is Jude McCann, and I work with the Farming Community Network. I've been with the organisation just over a year and a half. We predominantly work in England and Wales, but we do take calls from farmers, farm family members from across the UK. We work very closely with Chris and his team in RSABI, as well as RABI in England and other farming help organisations like Addington Fund and Forage Aid. So FCN was established just after the foot and mouth disease outbreak over 26 years ago now. So we are there to provide support to farmers, farming families who are going through challenging times. We have 30 groups across England and Wales with over 400 volunteers who will go out and provide support to farmers in their own homes, around the kitchen table, or a convenient place to meet. So it's very much around that emotional support. We walk with farmers during times of difficulty. One of the key differences with RSABI is we don't give out financial support, but we will work with other organisations, other charities in England and Wales. So as I said, we work across all of the UK. I'm in Northern Ireland currently, so some of you might have picked up on that accent. I'm on the home farm, and delighted to join you this evening. So thanks, Karen.
Brilliant. Thanks, Jude and Chris. That was a great, just little overview of what RSABI and FCN are. So firstly, could you just give us an overview of what mental health is? If we go to you first, Chris.
Yeah, no bother. It's a nice, difficult question for me, Karis. Thanks very much. I think it's important to point out that myself, I'm not a clinician. I'm not an expert in mental health. I can just sort of discuss about my own experiences with supporting people. I think mental health is best described as your ability to cope with stresses and challenges of everyday life, and that could be involved in work. It could be your personal life as well, and how we react to that. And everybody, there's peaks and troughs to everybody's mental health. I would imagine that we're all affected at some point in our lives, and it could be an influence through a bereavement. It could be having a very bad time at work or something like that. And it's our ability to bounce back for the challenges and how we process those thoughts and how we interact socially with people. Some people experience it for a short space of time, and others are maybe more susceptible to it. And it will have a real impact on their ability to interact in society, their ability to get up and go to work and engage with others. So it's important that we recognise that those of us who find it very difficult to bounce back from those setbacks in life, that we can reach out for support. And it's important to acknowledge as well that everybody, I believe everybody, is affected by mental health at some stage, and it's nothing to be ashamed of. It's part of life. So we want to try and encourage people to move away from the stigma that mental health brings, and encourage people to talk more about it, because it's just like having a physical issue. We all go into work, or we all say to your family members that you've got a bad back or you've got a sore leg. Mental health is just the exact same, and we need to be talking about it more.
And Jude, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, just like Chris, I am not a mental health expert, but we do provide support to people who are very often struggling in many different ways. And as Chris has said, every one of us has mental health. Chris, Cara, myself, we go through periods in our lives where we have good mental health and sometimes poor mental health. And, I was just thinking about this earlier, Cara. We all go through school and we do physical education and PE, but rarely was there much talk about, mental health. And that's why, I was delighted to join this evening, and thanks, Cara, for organising these types of sessions, because we need to be talking about mental health in the same way as we do talk about physical health. So it's when we experience mental health or mental ill health that then we need to know, well, what can we do to support people, and how can we help people through those periods in their lives that every one of us or some of our family members will experience at some stage.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that was a great roundup of what mental health is, and that yes, we all do go through those peaks and troughs throughout our lives.
Yeah.
What impact does the agricultural industry have on our mental health? Do you want to start on this one?
Sure, Cara. So agriculture, whether you're farming in Scotland or Northern Ireland, where I'm at, it's such an unpredictable industry to be in, and there's so many factors that we have no control over, whether it be the weather or prices or Brexit or schemes on an individual level we have little or no control over. So I think that's why agriculture in particular is something that we need to think about in terms of how it affects people's mental health. Other things like animal disease, crop disease, these things happen in farming, and every one of us can cope with one or two things going on in our lives, whether it be personal or business or the farm or whatever. But it's when there's a TB outbreak, when milk prices have hit rock bottom, when the weather, prolonged spells of wet weather, which we experience in this part of the world, or very dry weather, it's when those things start to mount up that it starts to affect our mental health. And we all have different thresholds. Like Chris's threshold of what he can cope with will be different from me. And we need to recognize that not everybody copes well under those pressures. And if we know a family member or a neighbour, somebody around us who we know is struggling, then it is really important to reach out and talk to people. And, ask the question, how are you feeling? And ask them twice. And maybe take them off the farm, go and have a walk, have a chat over a pint, whatever it is that you feel comfortable and relaxed in, and actually start to talk about mental health the way we would talk about that sore leg or that sore back that Chris mentioned.
And Chris, do you have anything to add to that one?
Yeah, I think one of the important things for me is that, over the past year, we've all had a taste of working from home and managing that work-life balance. And for a lot of farmers and crofters, that's an experience that they've dealt with for a very long time, and it's not being able to switch off for your home and your work. If you're living on a working farm and, there's people that will be getting up at 6 a.m, no finishing work until 8, 10 at night, and then or working long hours into the night during periods like this during harvest. So I can maybe, when I was working in an office, I could maybe jump in the car, drive for a half an hour on the commute, kind of de-stress and think about my day. Whereas, a lot of people in agriculture don't have that opportunity, and that cloud for work follows them, 100 yards into the house, and that there's no opportunity to sort of just switch off. The long days, the working 6-7 days a week as well. And I think especially during COVID, not having that opportunity to go to a show, to go to a mart, a lot of farmers would have organised their holidays around shows and things like that, and that would be their time where they would go and meet friends that they've not seen in a while, and they've not had that opportunity this year as well, which has obviously played a massive impact on their mental health, I would imagine too. And I think what a lot of people would see is bureaucracy as well, filling in paperwork, the new subsidy regime that's going to be coming in the next few years, this trade deal with Australia that's in the press, and all these types of things. They when we speak to farmers on a regular basis, although they're not happened yet, so the trade deal with Australia's not happened yet, the new subsidy regime's not came in yet, it's in their mind, it's playing on their mind because they're worrying about what's happening in the future. Climate change as well is playing, a major role in their thought processes. So there's all these things going on at the time, and as Jude mentioned, the weather, it can completely prevent you for doing your work and getting an income, and you can't control something like that. So I think, as Jude's already says, we need to recognise that there is a lot of factors that can contribute to poor mental health, and people do have their own thresholds for it. And as I say, it's important to recognise it as a real thing that will affect a lot of people. And often what I find, no strange, but often what I find is people always think that these issues only affect them and everybody else is doing well. And I think it's important that to come to events like this or to reading a news article that they realise that what I'm going through, somebody else is also going through as well, and it does give them that wee bit of confidence to recognise that they're not the only ones. You know, there is other people out there, and there is help and support out there too.
Yeah.
And Cara, can I just add to that? You know, I don't know many other professions or sectors where people work as hard as farmers do. And Chris mentioned the long hours that farmers put in. And, you know, that can take its toll on people, especially when things aren't going well and some of the issues that we've talked about. And I know you had Doug Avery on recently, and, you know, Doug talks about, you know, the resilience and making sure that we're as resilient as we possibly can be. And I remember talking to a farmer, and he talked to me about the life-farm balance. So instead of a work-life balance, he was talking about a life-farm balance. So, you know, we need to get that priority right in our farm family and our household. Yes, farming is important, but time with your partner, with your wife, with your kids is also important. And actually just taking that step away on a Sunday afternoon or getting away for a day, stepping off the farm, very often you come back sort of re-energized. And while those problems or stressors haven't gone away, you've actually, it helps give you a new perspective. So yeah, it's about getting that life-work balance or that life-farm balance. And then another issue that we haven't mentioned is succession in farming. That can be a huge concern and worry for people, you know, not just for the older members of the family, but also there's pressure on the younger members of the family where they feel maybe, well, the farm's been in the family for 4 generations and I will need to keep it going at all costs. So, you know, it's important to have those conversations because very often we just shy away from it in the farming family. We'll talk about that next year, or there's a wedding coming up. We'll see how that goes. And we'll think about succession later on. Actually, just talk around the dinner table and say, you know, well, what do you want to do in the future? What's your plans? Do you want to be here farming? Do you want to go off and do something else? And, you know, unless we have those conversations, we build up pictures in our mind that very often aren't the reality, and it causes unnecessary worry and stress.
And I can come in there, Cara, as well. And for a lot of certainly clients that we speak to as well, it's not just the pressure of wanting to stay in farming and maybe going away and doing something else. A lot of people want to stay in farming, but they're concerned about how their father, for example, might want things to be done, or that they'll always have an influence, and they maybe want to diversify. The younger generation that's coming in might want to do things differently, might want to diversify. But you know, sometimes the father or the family wants things to be done a certain way, and they never feel like they'll be ever let to do their own thing. So that does play a big part in it as well, in affecting people's mental health.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with all those things you've said. That's brilliant. I think we've probably covered some of this, but from the kind of calls that you get, what are the main triggers for mental health among farmers and crofters that you get on quite a regular basis? Chris, shall we go to you first this time?
Yeah. So there's, and we have already discussed quite a lot, and there's a variety. Often it's a combination of things, and I think, as Jude has already mentioned, it's about how much people can cope with. And often, unfortunately, a lot of people who contact us is when they're at crisis point, and it's when things have stacked up. So maybe they've had a repair that's had to be done, so there's a financial situation there. The landowners maybe mentioned something about the tenancy coming to an end, and they're maybe needing to move on, and then all these things start to build up, and then that's when they get in touch. And what we want to encourage is for early intervention is to get people to get in touch with us at the as early as possible, so that we can provide that emotional and practical support for people to try and prevent things from getting worse. In terms of the types of triggers, as I say, you know, we've already talked quite a bit, but definitely financial issues play quite a big part, and no filling in a piece of paperwork correctly, somebody who's went through an audit and they've no, for QMS or something like that, they've no ticked a box here, that means that they might lose their QMS certification. There's other things going on. They're working in a busy environment, so they've got a certain time to challenge it and they miss it, and then that has an impact on their ability to run a business and things like that. So there's all these things, and it's a busy and it's a hectic environment that people work in, and it's quite easy to miss something, like that, we know completing a certain thing properly, which does have an impact on their ability to do things. And also, I think we need to take into account people's personal circumstances. It's not just about what happens on the farm. It's, it could be a bereavement. It could be their own health, their own physical health that is, as people get older, their physical health won't be as it used to be, and they're still trying to do the same jobs. And that's getting them down as well. That's impacting on their mental health too. So there is a lot of factors, and some are farm related and some are that their own personal relationships that they have a fact that could be family breakdown as well. But it is often, unfortunately, it's when that person's they've reached a crisis and they've reached out, and we, through things like this that we're doing, and a lot of the work that we do, we're wanting to try and people to come forward as soon as possible.
Yeah, right. Jude, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah. So we're talking about the triggers for poor mental health, and I remember at the beginning of COVID and the lockdowns, I very often heard people say, well, farmers are used working in isolation. It doesn't really impact us the way it does the rest of society. And there's an element to that, but also we have to think of it in terms of, if the pub on the Friday or the Saturday night was the main social outlet, or the church service on a Sunday was the main time of getting together with neighbours, the community, and you've lost that over a lot of the last year and a half, that has had an impact. And we see that in some of the calls that come through to us. As I said, we work with Chris's team, and we take quite a lot of calls from Scotland in the evenings and weekends and holiday periods. And the triggers are different for everybody. You could have a farm family business and they're 2.5 million in debt and things are going wrong and it's causing stress. You could have another elderly farmer with 12 cows and one cow has died, and there's a burst water pipe on the farm and he has to pay that bill and will have to pay another animal. Some people can go to bed with that level of debt of 2.5 million and be absolutely fine. For other people, I owe the neighbour £50 and that's causing me stress. So, we have to think about how we all react differently in different circumstances. Rural crime is an issue, and in a lot of rural communities, that can be a trigger, causing, worry and stress. And there's also poverty in rural communities. It's often hidden. It doesn't show up in the government statistics of, you hear of low levels or high levels of deprivation, and they talk about cities and towns and big estates, but actually there's a significant amount of that in rural communities. So, all those things combined can be triggers for people, I would argue. And also facing retirement in farming, I think, is harder than any other industry because, I know my own dad, he's in his late 70s now, doesn't have a lot of other interests outside of farming. So that would be something I would say to people, is have other hobbies, have other interests, that when it comes that time to hand over to the next generation, that you have other things that you want to do and be involved in. I just tell you an example recently. My dad's slowing up a little bit, and I seen him walking out through the field, and we had a new bull in the field, and he actually went in with it, and he's walking with a stick at this stage. So I had to shout out the window and say, Dad, don't be going in there. It's not safe. So he came back, and I felt bad saying it to him. But at the end of the day, he understood himself. He can't jump over the gate or over the fence the way my nephews who are 18 can. So, we just need to be conscious of what the triggers are for the younger generations and the older generations are very different. And for the older generations, loneliness and isolation, especially for this last year and a half, is something we all need to be conscious of our own family, but also neighbours that we know of that maybe had a bereavement, or there has been, and we haven't had the chance to have the wake or the normal community support that would often happen. So I would just encourage people, pick up the phone, check in on people, go and visit when we're allowed to visit, and have that chat over the foreign gate, with people that have had a rough time this last year and a half.
Yeah, no, I would totally agree with that. The next one is, what support is available for farmers and crofters? Jude, if we go to you first with that one.
Okay, well, the likes of organisations like FCN, RSABI, it doesn't have to be a crisis point to pick up the phone to either of our organisations. If you're worried about somebody else and you don't know what to do, just pick up the phone and talk to some of our folks, and we will help wherever we can, or if you can get permission from the other individual. So there's charities like RSABI, FCN. We often overlook just the support that we can get from our GPs or the pharmacist. Let's talk to our own doctors about our mental health the way we talk about our physical health, and don't be ashamed or embarrassed to do that. And being part of groups, whether it be young farmer clubs or some of the unions, be part of those groups, get involved in discussion groups, because the social interaction that goes around some of those formal meetings is extremely valuable. But probably from a Scottish perspective, Chris, you'll be able to give a bit better answer than I have for this one.
Yeah. So I mean, the most obvious one for me is, if you're involved in Scottish agriculture, get in touch with ourselves at RSABI and give the helpline a call, and we will do our best to help you. Although we support a lot of people with mental health issues, what we want to try and focus on is what is the triggers that we talked about in the last question, and often that means what's the practical support that we can provide. So that might be issues with the business. It could be an animal welfare issue. A lot of the times with animal welfare, we need to look at the farmers' welfare, because that might be having an impact on animal welfare. So that's what we look at. And if it's income, if it's issues with financial stuff, we might suggest to go and get a benefit check from local Citizens Advice Bureau or the local authority. So although we provide that emotional support as well, we want to try and get to the root cause of the issue, and that might be more professional help as well, because as I said at the very beginning, we are not mental health experts, and we don't pretend to be. We're there to provide a listening ear. But if you're needing more professional help, then we can access professional counselling as well, and we might be able to provide financial support with that too. So there's a whole heap of stuff that we can help with. So I definitely encourage anybody who is feeling like they are struggling to get in touch with us. Out with ourselves, I think the Farm Advisory Service is a point of contact for anybody that feels that they're for more practical support that is struggling. They have access, or you can get access to grant funding for a number of specialist plans, and we do work quite closely with them, that we can get access to a business efficiency plan relatively quickly for people. There is succession planning support, there's resilience planning there as well. So there is support out there for farmers and crofters from the Farm Advisory Service. And I think, more local help as well, being aware of other organisations that you can go to for certain issues, like Citizens Advice, like ACAS for employment advice. So there is other organisations out there, and I would encourage anybody to look into their local community. There are third sector organisations that are out there to look at, see what help and support, and different groups that might be available that provide some support as well. So there is a whole heap of places out there that's willing to give support to people that's just trying to make that contact and get in touch as soon as possible.
Just one other one, Cara. We've developed a resource, an online resource over the last couple of years called FarmWell. And we found it really popular, and a lot of people are using it, and there's useful information for people from Scotland as well. But it's around sort of personal resilience, business resilience, and where to go to get help. And there's a lot of good information that we update on a fortnightly basis. But even right down to things like, if you're concerned that there's early stage dementia in a family member, what do I do about that? Or where can I get help on a specific issue like that? Or if there's a TB breakdown, where can I go to get help? So not everybody's comfortable at picking up the phones, but there is online resources that people should check out. And sure, the website for RSABI will have a lot of really good information. And also just to stress, in a lot of the cases that we support, there maybe isn't any mental health issues. So don't feel like there has to be a mental health issue to be able to reach out to us. It could be a whole raft of things, whether it be family issues, And I remember somebody saying to me, a farmer who put off phone and FCN, and he said to me, there's a lot of people worse off than I am. So I didn't want to, waste your time. Or actually, we have a great team of people. They're there to support. So don't be afraid to pick up the phone and have a chat.
And I think that's a really important point that you mentioned there about, you don't have to have a mental health issue to get in touch. RSABI is not a mental health charity. It's an issue and a topic that we deal with quite a lot. But we're not a mental health charity, and we do, I personally pride ourselves on offering that practical support. And if somebody phones up and we don't know the answer, we're going to do our damnedest to find out that answer for somebody. So yeah, definitely, if you don't have a mental health issue, that is not an issue. That's not an issue. You can get in touch with us.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you. Just as a reminder to everyone who's on, you can pop your questions in the chat box and we'll go through them as well. And we've actually got one in the chat box that I'm going to ask. So what can we do to challenge stigma associated with poor mental health? Jude, do you want to start with that one?
Well, I think holding sessions like this is a great first step, Cara. So congratulations for doing that. And I think all of society has, we've seen a significant change in the last few years. People are talking about mental health, poor mental health, in a way that we weren't doing. And especially we weren't doing it in farming circles 5-10 years ago. So I think things are starting to move in the right direction. I think the more we normalize it, the more comfortable people will be in coming forward and talking about the issues. And I think we're already starting to see sort of the fruits of our labour in some respect, because while the calls to FCN as an organisation hasn't increased significantly over the last year and a half, the number of calls in relation to people presenting and saying, I'm experiencing poor mental health or depression or stress. People are openly talking about it in a way that sometimes maybe a few years ago, we would have the telephone conversation, and then we might identify a local volunteer to go out and provide support. It's maybe on the second or third or fourth visit before we actually got to that point where we realised actually we need to get the local doctor involved, or we need to get professional help for someone. Whereas now people are more confident at expressing that even on an initial phone call, which is a good thing. But I would also highlight that probably the restrictions that we've all been under has actually added to that as well over the last period of time.
Chris, do you have anything to add to that one?
I think Jude's fairly summed it up for me as well. It's about talking about it. The more we talk about it, the more we normalise about it. We normalise it. So again, having sessions like this are really useful. I think though that for here, but in the media, it's often presented as entertainment. Somebody's poor mental health, and that discourages a lot of people from coming out and speaking about it. So there has to be a change there as well. But I think having sessions like that, talking about it openly on social media and and things like that is challenging that perception. So yeah, I think Jude is fairly summed it up for me.
Yeah, and just to add, don't underestimate just giving somebody half an hour of your time and being there and listening to them. Sometimes we tend to talk too much and not listen enough. And, and sometimes it's human nature to start telling somebody else about your own problems, or you think you've got problems, wait till you hear about so-and-so, or wait till you hear about my situation. Actually try and park your own stuff and genuinely listen to the person that is struggling, and show that empathy as best you can is probably key. So that would be a significant way of showing or helping to reduce that stigma.
Brilliant, thank you. We'll go back to some of my questions that I had. One of my questions is, how can you help someone who feels that maybe their friend is suffering or struggling with their mental health? What can you do as that person to help them out? Chris, if we go to you first.
Yeah, I think we've already touched on quite a lot, to be honest. Just asking somebody, picking up the phone, sending a text message, asking how they're getting on, how they're feeling. Especially now that, fingers crossed, restrictions are going to be easing, or restrictions have eased and hopefully will stay that way, meeting up, visiting somebody, just having a blather with them. I don't think we appreciate how much people appreciate that chance to have a chat, and it might only be for 10 minutes, but that might have made that person's day because they don't speak to really anybody else throughout the day. We do a lot of outbound support calls for those who are isolated, they don't have family members or friends to speak to, so we just have a blather with them, and it's not about anything in particular. It's about what you watch on the TV or what you're having for tea, but just having that social contact really does help. If there is specific issues that are affecting people, encourage them to reach out to support from the likes of ourselves, Citizens Advice, ACAS. As I say, there is other agencies out there that can support. Even if they don't feel comfortable getting in touch with the likes of RSABI, you can offer with their permission that you could make the contact, and then we can then contact the person who's needing support, as long as we've got permission to do that. Encourage them to make an appointment with their GP, or if they don't want to do it, because some people, I've speak to quite a few farmers who either don't have time for a GP, or they just don't do GPs. They just don't get involved in them at all. Offer to make that appointment on their behalf as well. And if more professional help's needed, suggest speaking to a professional, a counsellor. There's a COSCA website that's got registered counsellors in Scotland. They can have a look and find somebody that they might feel comfortable speaking to. Often having that impartial person to speak to is really useful for people, because they might feel too close to somebody. So just having that sort of impartiality is really, really good for a lot of people as well. And that's, I think, talking to people is just listening, to somebody vent. As Jude mentioned earlier on, when we constantly think about something, we play it up in our minds, and it's often bigger than it actually is. And then when you eventually speak about it, it feels like a weight's been lifted off your shoulders. I know that's certainly the case for me. And it is difficult to talk about things that we find difficult, that we're struggling with, especially in farming, where it's often seen as this, manly profession, and we don't speak about our feelings. We'd rather just get on with it. My father wasn't like that, I'm not going to be like that type of thing. And it is difficult for people, so it's asking the question, as Jude says, ask it twice, and just hopefully they open up and just listen.
Yeah, Jude, have you got anything to add?
Just very briefly, I think Chris has covered it very well. One of the things I would say is just look out for some signs or changes in people's behaviour. If you notice somebody is a lot more irritable, or they're socially withdrawn, and a change in character, that could be a sign that actually there's something causing trouble, that they would, they need someone to reach out to them and talk to them. Yeah, that would probably be the only other thing to add. And just when you mentioned there about the vet, I was thinking it'd be an interesting piece of work or a study for somebody to do, how often farmers call the vet and how often do they call their GP.
GP,
you know. So actually, why not have that yearly check, or and like you do for the MOT for the car, and then it's not just your physical health, it's your mental health that you need to be speaking to your doctors about. So it's a very good point, Chris.
Yeah, and it's something I saw on social media recently, actually, and I think it's a brilliant thing to kind of sum up what you guys have said, is 10 minutes, 2 cups of tea, 3 dunk biscuits. And that's all it takes, is sitting down and having that cup of tea and having that chat with someone.
Yep.
Right, I've got a couple more questions that have come in. What are RSABI and FCN doing to prepare for issues caused by Brexit and changes to support payments and the impact they will have over the next few years? Jude, do you want to start?
So yeah, we do recognise there's big changes coming down the line, whether it's in England, Wales, Scotland or Northern Ireland. One of the things that we are currently doing is we are very blessed with a fantastic number of volunteers who are mostly from farming families, farming backgrounds, or have worked in the industry. And in some parts of the country, we need to up our numbers a little bit. So we are bringing on new volunteers to assist us with the helpline. Our volunteers help manage our phone lines, but also going out to shows and marts and talking to people about us, our organisation, and how we can help, and also visiting people in their own homes. So we are trying to do the best we can to prepare for what is coming down the line. And we've all got limited resources, and that's why it's important that we do work closely with our SABI and the other organisations, because none of us can do it on our own. So the more we can do as a collective group of organisations, I think the stronger we will be. I'm conscious of time. Chris, do you want to come in on that one as well?
Yeah. Obviously, it's a big stress for a lot of people, and it's a bit of an unknown as well. It won't be, I think, until 2024 when we know what the subsidy regime will be in Scotland. And as well as, potential trade deals and things that will be happening as well. So I think, there will be big change coming, and, the potential that climate change is going to have to have an impact in the way things are done as well will obviously be a challenge for people down the line. So yeah, we are we're making sure that we've got, enough resource there for our helpline team that are able to respond to people's inquiries and concern. We work closely, as I mentioned earlier, with the Farm Advisory Service, and hopefully that organisation will be there moving forward, and we will continue to work closely with them. And we're also we're hopefully going to have another member of the team on board as a case officer too, just so again that we've got that resource there, because we do anticipate that people wanting support from our service is going to increase.
Yeah. And that's great. What do you think the last couple of years have had? How will that impact, like, long term on mental health with the COVID pandemic?
Yep. I think every part of society is going to be affected. Their mental health is going to be affected. It won't just be agriculture alone. I think that not being able to go to local marts, not being able to go to local shows, that has had quite a big impact on a lot of our clients, certainly, and their mental health. I think that, we're not seeing a lot of people for a long time. We have a tendency to withdraw, and it takes quite a bit to then engage back in society. For instance, myself, I found that a wee bit difficult, and you're suddenly, you've not seen MD in 2 weeks, then you're suddenly in Asda and there's loads of people round about you, and you start to get a wee bit hesitant. So, you know, I can't say for certain that, you know, because the agriculture community is often isolated, you know, just by the nature of the work that they do. So it will, you know, COVID restrictions and things would have had a massive impact. I can't say for certainty, but I do think in general, you know, it has had an impact on everybody's mental health because of that uncertainty, that, you know, not being able to socialise is what, you know, maybe we did, and it will take people a long time to recover for that and deal with that, you know, because people have missed weddings, they've missed, you know, births of grandchildren, and, you know, so it's maybe not so much the agricultural side of things that's going to have an impact on people. It's going to be the personal side of things, that the things that they've missed out on, the people that they've not seen. So yeah, I think it will have a role to play, but we can't be sure to what extent that's going to be.
Yeah. And Jude, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I agree with everything Chris has said. But I am also very, very hopeful, because, you know, the farming community is probably some of the strongest communities about. So whether there's a snowstorm or a flood, people do pull together, you know, and help each other out. And I think coming out of what we've just experienced in the last year and a half, you know, hopefully people understand that actually, you know, just the way as we have supported our neighbours during emergencies or through a family bereavement, actually now is an important time to be supporting our neighbours and our friends and those that are maybe a bit more isolated in our communities. And, you know, farming families are really, really resilient, and I know will bounce back well. And, you know, yes, there's a lot of concern about, you know, future subsidies and viability. But, you know, we are the envy of the world, and, you know, in many, many countries that I have went to, with what we can produce on these islands. So, you know, we have to recognise we produce really good, high quality food. The world population's increasing significantly. There's going to be demand for what we can produce. So I'm very hopeful that the farm and agriculture community across the UK, while it won't be easy recovering from what we've had, I'm very confident we will get to a much stronger place in the near future.
Brilliant, thank you. Just got a couple of questions that have come in, and then we'll round up and finish off. You've both spoken about the many challenges for people within the agricultural industry. What would you say to encourage younger people and new entrants about the future opportunities in farming? Chris, do you want to start?
Yeah, I'll admit I've not got an agricultural background, so I might struggle a wee bit with that question, but I do think that there is opportunity out there for younger people, and taking advantage of things that the Farm Advisory Service offer and the grants or the new entrant scheme that they run will be very useful for people. There is likely new things that will be coming in, and I think that young people bring new ideas to the sector as well, and they develop things and they diversify things, and I think that's really important. It's the sort of imagination that young people bring to the sector, and we need to encourage that, you know, and especially as we touched on earlier when it comes to succession, you know, like the younger demographic, you know, sons, daughters of farmers that are maybe coming up to retire, you know, they will have their own ideas about how they want to do things, and that is often a difficult discussion that they need to have, but it's encouraging that. It's encouraging the sort of new ideas that they bring, and hopefully that will see a really vibrant agricultural sector in the future.
Yep, brilliant. And Jude?
Yeah, I think sort of relates to my last comments, you know, that there is a future for farming on these islands. It may not look the same as what it did for our parents or our grandparents who were maybe, you know, taking over the farm business. I've got twin nephews, they're 17, just turning 18, and they're both starting agricultural college in a couple of weeks' time. And, you know, the opportunities that there are within the wider food and agricultural industry is huge. New technologies, new developments, robotics. So I think, the pace of change is continuing to grow faster and faster. And within that, there will be a lot of opportunities. I think people just need to be prepared that it may not look the same as it did 5 years ago, 10 years ago, or in my parents' generation, that actually farming is going to look very, very different. But if you can embrace it and look for the niches in the markets and look for the opportunities, I think there's certainly a lot of hope. And I would, despite all the shadows that are hanging over the sector at the moment, I would still be encouraging people. And there's a viable future for farm and food and agriculture on these islands.
Brilliant, thank you. And just the final question, which I think it's a great question that's come in, is what can people do to support the work of FCN and RSABI? Jude, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think just, talking to people about organizations like this, because it's surprising how many agriculture shows or marts that we go out to, and, people haven't heard of FCN, and it's probably the same with RSABI. So actually just letting people know about it in your community. If you're prepared to share some of our information, we can get leaflets and posters that you can put up at local marts or areas that farmers would pick up the information. We're small charities, and we depend heavily on donations from young farmers clubs doing fundraisers for us. Communities getting together, but it's actually the raising the awareness of us being there and that we're available and that it doesn't have to be a crisis to contact us. Those are the types of things that would be really, really appreciated and useful. Our contact details are going to be shared, I think, at the end of this, or forwarded out. So if anybody does want to get in touch to help in any way, volunteer or provide information, please do get in contact.
And Chris, what about RSABI?
Yeah, I think just being aware of us, being aware of the support that we can provide, and having it in the back of your mind if you are speaking to somebody who you feel that is struggling or knows crisis, as Jude says, but they just maybe need somebody to sound off to or get a wee bit of support from. We work and we try and raise awareness with people who visit farms on a regular basis, like vets, just so that they're aware of us, and to either get permission from the person that's needing the support, and then the vet would contact us, and then we've got permission to then contact the client. So raising awareness, absolutely. There is a lot of people within agriculture who do know about RSABI, but there's still a lot of people who don't, or they misunderstand a wee bit about what we do as well. Sometimes people think we just provide financial support, but it is much more than that. And as Jude says, our resources are limited. We rely on donations. We do a lot of fundraising activities. We have some local groups that help fundraise for us. They think great things to do, like repair a tractor and sell it and donate the proceeds to RSABI, which is great. We have a yearly fundraising campaign, which the Great Glen Challenge, and this year we're having a virtual Great Glen Challenge, and it's tomorrow. So if anybody fancies running a 10k tomorrow, you could maybe try and raise some money within the next 24 hours, and you can do your 10k.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much, Chris and Jude. That has been a fantastic question and answer session, and it's just been really good to hear from both of you about what mental health is and also what support is available out there. Mary, if we could put up the slides so that we can see the 2 slides. Thank you. So just for the participants that are here tonight, this is the RSABI helpline number. It's 0300 111 4166, and it's open 365 days of the year from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. So we'll just leave it there for a second if you want to note that down. If we just go to the next slide, Mary. And this is the Farming Community Network, which is what Jude's been talking about. And their helpline is 03000 111 999. And again, it's open 7 a.m. to 11 a.m. every day of the year. So we'll just leave that there for you for a second. Okay, and I would just like to finally say, if we just go to the next slide, Mary. Oh, there we go. So if you fill in the evaluation form, which will pop up once you leave the meeting tonight, if you fill that in about tonight's meeting, you will be entered into a prize draw to win £50 worth of vouchers from either Damn Delicious or Battlefield Bakery. The evaluation form will only take you 2 minutes, and these are an important part of FAS. It just helps us track what we're doing well or what we need to improve. So if you could just spend 2 minutes filling that in once you leave the meeting. If you do miss it, it will come in an email to you, so you will get it. And finally, I would just like to say thank you very much for everyone who's attended tonight. It's been a fantastic session. I've really enjoyed it. And finally, just a massive thank you to Chris and Jude for coming along and providing us with a fantastic session. Okay. Thank you very much. Good night.
Thank you, Cara.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Cheers now. Bye.